Hello, ladies, and welcome to episode 79. I'm so excited that you're here. And if you're brand new, you're just now stumbling upon this podcast, I want to welcome you. And I hope that you're excited for today's episode. If you are one of my listeners that have been tuning in with me because today we have not only a real estate investor, a military woman, but she's also a doctor, you all. I mean, she has so much to bring to the table. And when I tell you that this lady specifically not only is willing to share what she knows, she's also willing to take the first step because the way she and I connected, she actually reached out to me first, and I was brand new at podcasting, and she's pretty much said, "Hey, I would love to come on your podcast. I would love to share what I know and just kind of share any tools that may help any military woman that is possibly transitioning and kind of go from there." So, that for me is kind of where I got sold on, her passion and really just her driven mentality that she has for what she does, what she offers, but also how it impacts the military woman community. So I'm just so happy that you're tuning in today. And I promise you that you will gain so much from her and from everything that she's learned throughout her journey while she was in the military, possibly, and even when she was completely out and how she got on this journey with real estate. And before I you get to listen to her, I'm going to go ahead and introduce her. As you may know, if you've been tuning in for the month of February, we had interviews on Mondays, and now here we are on a Wednesday. You are also going to be tuning in for the month of March on interviews from different military women, different backgrounds. So I'm just really excited that you get to meet her. So, Erin is a self made millionaire who achieved financial freedom through real estate investing in less than 4 years. To date, she has helped over 200 other investors to build cash flowing real estate portfolios, a U.S. Army veteran, and Erin understands what it's like to work for the man and be limited by a schedule and fixed income. Erin created a system to allow her to live a life by design and now has the time and resources to give back and focus on her family. Without further ado, Erin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. That was an awesome intro. I think that's the first time I've been formally introduced as doctor, so that's cool.
That's amazing. I love that you went for it. I mean, I think about it sometimes. I'm like, should I? But then I'm like, no, I just rather not go there just yet. Maybe in the future. I'm not sure there yet. I haven't completely said goodbye to that.
Yeah.
But it's an honor to have you. Again, you going through all these hurdles, obstacles, and I just love how you said, that you understand what it means to work for the man, right? Because I mean, I think we all do when it comes time, for the military. If you served in on now, in the corporate sector or just, out there trying to figure it out, start a business, we all know that at the end of the day, we are still, in a world where we could, have more when it comes to the gap of inequality. So thank you again. And, I just want to go ahead and start off since, you have so many things and I want to be able to capture as much as possible for this episode. What really got you started with real estate?
Yeah. Yeah, I've always been interested in real estate, and I think was intriguing to me was flipping. I've been around construction my whole life. My dad's an iron worker, owns his own business, and I've always just liked being around the job site. So I did some flipping in the beginning, but what I kind of learned about flipping was it was making me a decent amount of money for the most part. There was 2 properties that we actually lost money on, but we made a good amount of money, but it was really stressful, really time consuming, and it wasn't adding to our like long-term plan. We weren't building wealth. I wasn't building passive income. There's nothing passive about flipping. And then, you're dealing with contractors constantly, and
Yeah.
that is just such a challenge, and it's anytime you bring money into the picture, it's emotional, and,
Mm,
anyway, I just was like, "This is not what I wanna do forever." So, I shifted focus into exclusively now investing in turnkey properties, so, rent ready. I'm okay with doing a minor renovation. Like, right now, the last one I just bought, like, one of the units needs a new kitchen floor and one of the units needs painted cabinets. I'm okay with stuff like that, but I'm
yeah.
not willing to commit my life to flip projects anymore, at least not right now. I have a 3 and a 5-year-old
Mhm.
daughter, and, life is insane. So, part of like me taking control of life and increasing my wealth and also scaling my monthly income is just continuing to buy assets that produce cash flow. And so that's
Yeah.
what it's all about for me. And it's so liberating. Like our lives could not be more different than they were 4 years ago or, longer than that. And
Yeah.
super passionate about this for the military spouse because
Mhm.
having and maintaining a career as a spouse is honestly nearly impossible, like, to, continue on a trajectory, follow your spouse everywhere, pick up and go, like, it's really, really hard, and then percentage of military spouses that are underemployed is, like, 26%, and unemployed
Yeah.
is, like, 21%, and that's just the women that are looking now, I say women because most military spouses are women, but, there's
Right.
men out there too, and, that's just those that are looking for jobs. There's more that just have resigned to the fact that, like, it doesn't make sense for them to work, like, they will have to work for less than their worth, and then they've gotta pay for childcare, and it just is easier to stay home, and so a lot of these women, are probably resentful whether they want to admit it or not, and I I
Yeah.
can say that because when I got out of the Army, I got out very suddenly. We had our first kid, and I was still active duty, and my husband was, special forces. He had fairly recently,
Mhm.
like, switched over, and I was an engineer still, and we were like, "We're gonna just see how long we can ride this dual military thing out." It was, like, 7 years. I had served for 7 years on active duty, and I was like, "I don't think we're gonna make it a career, but let's try to do a couple more years." I loved
Right.
it. I was really good at it. And so 3 days after maternity leave, I got an email with orders to Afghanistan, and I
Wow.
literally laughed. I mean, I was so sleep deprived. I was so stressed out. It was so hard to just drop my kid at daycare, like, literally a mile down the road and be that far
Yeah.
away from her. And my husband was gonna deploy the same month, June of 2016. We're both gonna go the same month. He was gonna go to Iraq. I was gonna go to Afghanistan. And, like, ironically, right before this happened, I walked out of a meeting with my boss, who was a full bird colonel, so awesome, super supportive, and he wanted to make sure that the office that they set aside for me was, like, sufficient to pump because
Yeah.
yeah, they said this, like, they
Breastfeeding.
didn't have to because I was, like, one of 3 green suiters in this building, and the current or at least at the time, the rule was, like, if you have less than 50 soldiers, the requirements don't apply. So, anyway, yeah, it's so hopefully it's
Of
changed
course.
since then,
I
but
hope so too.
yeah, so they didn't have to do that for me, but they did, and they, like, set it up for they basically cleaned out this closet, but it was really nice, like, I had a window, I had my own desk, and I thought I was gonna be pumping in the car, so I was super thrilled. He was awesome, and then I left, and I had orders, to deploy, and I just left. Like, I was like, "There's no way I'm going." And I told my mom, and my mom was I called my mom right away before I even called my husband, and she was like, "Oh my god," she was panicking. I was like, "Mom,
Yeah.
I'm not going." I was like, "I will, like, go to Canada with my baby before I go," right? So I knew in that moment that I was no longer a soldier. Like, I'm
I
like,
love
"I don't
that.
wanna deploy. This is my job, and I don't wanna do it. So guess what?
Yeah.
This is
It's time to
it's
go.
over." Yeah. So I went home that night. I told my husband we were out on a walk, and, like, we just were like, "Okay, well, it was good while it lasted." And I literally resigned the next day. I submitted my packet that I already had, like, in my inbox, the whole, like, template and everything, because I had been, considering it. And my packet was approved like 3 days later. And so I tell
What?
people I resigned overnight, and people who don't understand the military are like, "You can't do that. No way you resigned overnight." I'm like, "Well, I made the decision. I submitted my request. It was, like, the most, like, anticlimactic event ever." And
Yeah.
6 months later, I was out, and I was a stay-at-home mom, and it was a whirlwind.
Yeah, yeah, no, I can imagine, and I love how you said that it was overnight because that is overnight, right? Like, it takes a while. I mean, it took me 6 months to even hit the send button and another 3 weeks for my, talent commander to come back and ask me, "Are you really sure? Is this what you wanna do?" And, this whole thing that really happens, and I get why, but you're right, it did happen overnight, and I'm just, really proud of you for being honest with yourself. It takes a lot. Like, I'll be honest, like, for me, that was just me, like, lying to myself. I'm like, "I kinda do want to make this a career, but I don't know." I was just in this, tiptoeing around both worlds, right? And I think that you doing it, making a decision right away, and just being completely honest and true to where you were at the moment, you're like, "I was sleep deprived, I was tired, was barely making it when it comes
Yeah.
to being a mom," and, that really, I think is a lot has a lot to say, when it comes to how you know yourself, and I think that at least for me, I lost sight of that, I wanna say 2 years in. I kinda just forgot who I was, and all I knew was that I was Captain Ray, and I'm gonna get this done, and nothing wrong with that, right? But I think it's kind of, I didn't really have any boundaries that helped me kinda come back and reel myself in and, look at the, future in 3 years from now because I was also doing military with my husband at Fort Bragg. He was on the GRF, so he was always, getting ready to deploy. So again, I applaud you for that. And, it's funny you said that you enjoy being on the sites because now it makes sense since you're an engineer officer. That's kind of like where you started and it just makes so much sense now that, that's something that you've always liked to do. I think, growing up with your dad in a similar field and, him having his own business, I think that's also what, the entrepreneurial spirit, right, that kinda gets you into real estate or once you're in it. And so now what has been the most challenging thing, and this is more specific, like, with the real estate, right, like, coming from a military background, mom, and now into real estate, what has been the most challenging for you?
Um, well, it's kind of like piggybacking off of what you said. I think like balancing it all and then like giving myself permission to just
Mm,
go for it. So like I getting out of the army was I didn't realize this at the time, but like it wasn't a decision I made for me. It was a decision I made for our family and because I knew I was so concerned that my husband offered to get out and I was like, I don't even know what else you would do. Like I felt like he was going to resent me and so I was like wouldn't even consider that option. Interestingly, I resented him so much and
mm,
still sometimes do. Like when I became a stay-at-home mom. I became a mom and lost my career, my network, everything overnight. And then, transitioning from the military is, I would say, harder than like most industries.
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, and then I like the biggest thing which I didn't realize until much later was just losing that network. I was around all these like young professionals. No one had kids yet, and then I had kids, and now suddenly I'm hanging out with all these moms that were Southern women who I've never like spent any time with. I'm from New York. It was just we were just really different. We were in really different places. Like so many of them wanted to homeschool, and I was like, every night I would go to bed like, my kids be in school? Can my kid be in school?" We only had our first one. I was like, "I cannot wait till they go to school because 'cause I'm like, I'm gonna sacrifice these 5 years of my life, and then they're going to school, and I'm going back to work." And I was like, "I can do this." But to be
Yeah,
honest, it was horrible. It was so
yeah,
horrible. And I think
it's so hard.
yeah, but it's all hard, and what I've kind of realized is, like, I deal with anxiety a lot, and not having anything to do is, like, the worst thing for my anxiety, and I, like, really struggle on holidays because you don't have anything to do, and so I've even on vacation and stuff, like, I've learned I have to, like, schedule things. I always have to have something to keep me going, otherwise I just really struggle, and so I didn't know that at the time. I don't think I had, like, the opportunity to process it. And I just didn't really think I was, like, worthy of anything. Like,
Mm,
I was like, I am just a stay-at-home mom. I shouldn't be making money. I don't deserve to make money, and I
yes.
think that held me back a lot, like, for, being able to scale, and even now, like, I make more money than I ever thought I possibly could, and I feel guilty about it all the time. And I struggle with that because I'm like, I know my husband does not feel guilty receiving a paycheck, and I hate that I feel guilty about it. But I think it's something that I will struggle with forever. And what I've learned is like two thoughts can't occupy the same space. So if I'm feeling
Right.
guilty, I can't also be improving my business, improving myself, being there for my family. And so I've learned to like just shift my focus. I do give myself a little time to like wallow and like, feeling sorry for myself. But then I'm like, all right, that's it. Time is up. Move on. Let's make some progress. So I think that for me is it, like feeling worthy, feeling like I deserve it, not feeling guilty for making money, being successful. And, just like allowing myself, one of the big things I say, and you can see behind me, I have this dream big sign. I
Yeah.
tell people all the time, like, set big goals and ruthlessly pursue them. And I think that big goals are easy for me, but the ruthless pursuit can be hard sometimes because I hold myself back. And I think a lot of
Mm,
us as women do that.
yeah. No, we do, and you hit up on so many great points here because we don't realize that regardless of what route we take, it's going to be hard, right? And I know you said that earlier, and it's going to be hard in different ways. And I loved how you said, that one of your kids, I think they were in school and you're like, "Okay, I can't wait for the next one to go in school," because I was the same way. When I was transitioning, my son wasn't in school yet, so I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do?" There's daycare, but then I felt guilty, and then I didn't feel I'm worthy of being a mom. I mean, there were so many variables playing in my mind, and then the emotions that would come up, I didn't know how to deal with them. I would try to avoid them or try to resist them or pretend that they weren't there and try to go on to the next thing. And I think that we do that so well based on how we trained our mind in the military because we're like, we have a mission, we got things to do, and we just have to keep going no matter what. And we're going to find a solution. And I love how you said, we kind of shift our focus. And I think that we do that so often that when it comes time to have a little bit of peace, a little bit of, doing something different that isn't within our comfort zone, we kind of just try not to dig into it too much that we immediately find an escape, which again cannot, it's not a huge deal, but I think when we get a negative upside or a negative net worth of what are we doing, right? Like, what are we actually getting out of it? And if it's procrastinating and analysis paralysis, and something's not right. And I
Yeah.
think that many of us do that or we go through that because we sometimes think that it's better on the other side or it's better in a different phase or a different stage, right? But when we get there, we're like, it's just as hard. It's just as challenging. So now what? Right. So, like for you, um, is this how the coaching came into play with, you possibly mentoring and then now coaching other, like, I think you meant your focus is military spouses on
Yeah.
how to get over
Yeah.
that?
So we moved to California, like, I guess almost 4 years ago now. And I was a realtor in Tennessee where we had been living prior
Mm,
to that. And then when I moved to California, we were only going for a year and a half because my husband was just working on a master's degree. So I didn't want to get licensed in California and like try to build my business there and then move again in a year and a half and do the same thing. And so I was like, I'm just going to become a referral agent. I'll just continue to network. And I've always wanted to launch like a coaching program because I was stuck in that analysis paralysis. Like the biggest thing is like knowing which step to take and then also having someone verify and validate what it is that you're pursuing. Cause I think for me, when I was pursuing real estate, everybody, like including my own mom, was like, don't do it. You're going to lose everything. And everyone has like some crazy story about this
mhm.
uncle that lost their shirt in real estate. And it's like, the negativity is so it's
Yeah.
overwhelming, and it's like
Mhm.
the noise, and so it wasn't until I got a mentor who's actually a Marine, from White Feather Investments. His name is Buddy Rushing, and he was the one who just was like, "Just get after it. Get out there, make
Yeah.
offers," and I offered on a 10 unit, which was just like my 4th property, I think, and when he told me to make I brought it to him because I thought he would wanna buy it, and then he told me to make an offer, and I was like, "You're crazy." Like, I'm like, "I've bought, like, a duplex and 3 single family homes, like, a 10 unit, I'm not there yet." He was like, "What's the worst that could happen?" And I
Mhm.
just did it, I put it together, I set up a partnership, and we took the deal down, and it's like it's amazing. We've owned it now for, I guess, 3 years, and it just cash flows like crazy, it's increasing in value, it's been an awesome experience. But had he not, like, pushed me in that direction, I never would have even made the offer. And
Yeah.
so knowing that is what really kind of, um, like, pushed me to sort of set up this program. And I had this free time once I moved to California because I was self-managing some of my properties in Tennessee. I was a realtor, then I got to California, and I wasn't really doing those things. I put everything under property management. So I suddenly had this time and I decided to launch this program, which comes with one-on-one coaching. And then I more recently have gotten into, I'd always like been told like niche down, like the riches are in the niches and all this stuff. And I've always known that like my niche is like women, especially military women, especially stay-at-home
Mhm.
moms that are unfulfilled. And uh, but I just like have always told myself like there's not enough women out there. My network is mostly men because I'm military background.
Military.
And
Mhm.
then my dissertation was about investor psychology with a focus on women. And what I found is that women don't really believe in themselves enough to invest in themselves, which I'm guilty of.
Right.
And we just doubt our abilities, even though across the board we're better investors than men in every single metric. The only thing they
Wow.
beat us in is maybe, willingness to take risk, which does not work out well for them, the men as them. And I hope I'm not coming off as like a man hater.
Oh, listen, guys, if you are a guy listening to this, please don't take it personal.
Yeah, please.
It's just statistics.
Please, that's been a hard time. Yeah, yeah. And the reason that I can like I get kind of heated about this is because the investing industry is so male dominated, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like we use a bull, right? It's like you're supposed to be this like masculine, strong, like freaking bull. And it's like the buy and hold method and the more like conservative approach is so much more productive. And the feminine touch is has proven over and over again to be more
Yeah.
successful. And most of the people that came out of 2008 and actually made money and recovered are women. It
Wow.
was men that lost the people that lost
Yeah.
everything was the majority of them were men because they pulled out. Women
Mhm.
stuck in there, hung in there, and then it all came back, right?
Right.
So, more millionaires came out of that event than ever, and we'll see kinda what happens in this, like, post-COVID era, but anyway,
Yeah.
I'm just, like, so off track.
No, no, you're
I
fine. This is good.
so, yeah, so I've started to focus on women, and I have this women's conference, and I get a lot of flack sometimes from men, like, "How come I can't come?" And I'm like, "This is something that's only for women because the conversation is different. Women open
Mhm.
up differently when there aren't men in the room, and this does
Yes.
not happen." Like, most of the investor meetups that you go to, a lot of the investor conferences are male dominated, if not
Mhm.
completely male attended. So that's what that's for, and I've just found that, like, we all have the same concerns, as women, like, we all almost have the same concern of, like, worthiness and investing in ourselves and, whether we want to admit it or not, but it's really cool to bring it people together and, like, say, like, "How do you overcome this? How do you deal with this?" And a lot of women who are really successful are like, "I haven't." Like, I've been a BA investor for 15 years, and I still struggle with it. But just sharing how they cope with it, I think is super empowering.
Yeah. I love that. I absolutely love that because you're right. Many of the real estate, gurus that I follow are men. I mean, I'm pretty sure you're very familiar with Grant Cardone, right? Like, there aren't, at least from my perspective, I'm not, investing in real estate or anything like that just yet, but for me, it's kinda like one of those things that's in the back of my mind, and I'm like, "I'll eventually get there," and I think for me, it's more of the, time consuming, right? In my brain, I'm like, I have this belief of there's going to be some time that I'm also investing and, maybe not necessarily like the risk, per se, but for me, it's more of like, I'm gonna have to, do my coaching and do my 9 to 5 and do XYZ and the family and the kids and, also at the same time still focus on my faith. And I think, you could tell me now, you're like, "Wendy, well, that's not how it goes," right? Like, there are just so many things, and yes, you're gonna have to invest a little bit of time, but it's not possibly what I'm imagining. In my brain, I'm like, "It's a lot," right? But, I just love that you are, hosting this and that you're bringing more women together, which, by the way, I'm going to be part of one of your events that you're hosting. Not sure if this is, what you were talking about, but, I look forward to that event so that I, can really learn more because, again, ladies, this opportunity is all about, right? For everyone to learn more about why it's so important to bring this to the women community, to the military spouse community, because it is one of the things that you can do remotely, that you don't have to, ask for permission and be like, okay, well, I'm moving. Can I relocate to, wherever this company is at or where my husband or my wife is relocating? But at the end of the day, like you mentioned, Erin, and you bring up really valid points here is, self-worth, and sometimes even feeling guilty, right? Like you mentioned, you may end up making more than your spouse, but at the end of the day, I think it's again those limiting beliefs that we have about what we can bring to the table without putting that much time as well. Even though your husband may be working 12 hours or more a day, and you're like, I'm only working 7, and this is what I'm bringing. But kind of again having this kind of patriarchy mentality that we have, and I think that that's where you really come in, the value that you have on both ends, coming from a military male dominant environment and now into a very small women community in the real estate industry. And I think it's a beautiful thing that you're doing. And one last question, because I'm sure this is why a lot of the ladies are, really waiting for as well. How do you manage to, do the real estate and possibly even more of the construction flipping? Not sure if that's also what you're still doing, but the family as well. How is that working out for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I have a lot of systems like calendars and I have limited time to work. My 5-year-old's in kindergarten, my 3-year-old only goes to school like part day, 3 days out of the week.
Mm,
So, when she's in school, I'm like head down, no distractions, like get after it. And I have a to-do
love
list. I
it.
actually have a tracker that I print out every Sunday and kind of like go through it. I'm going to show you a little bit. But this is, like, what keeps me on track for my priorities, and it's 2 sides. One side has my calendar, and then, like,
Love it.
my follow-ups. These are people I have to follow up with. This is, like, all the things that I do, my portfolio, my calendar, I broker private money loans, and then content for social media, systems, events, course referrals, real estate referrals, and then home, which is always built. And so, I focus on there's things I have to do every day at the top, and then these are things I fill in as I need to. And what I've kind of learned is like, I don't know if this is just like a woman thing. I think it's a personality thing, but I tend to be just like a to do list person and I just want to be
Mhm.
productive. And I used to like do things just so I could cross them off the list. And what I've learned in my like 4 years as an entrepreneur is like, if it's not gonna make me any money, I do not do it. Like, the purpose of my business is to make money. If I'm doing something that's not gonna make me money in a direct or indirect way, I just don't do it. It gets thrown out. And then if it's something that will make me money or contributes to some income producing activity, and I hate doing it, and it, like, sucks the life out of me, I outsource it. And I know a
Love
lot of
it.
people are like, "Outsource the activities that are, like, below you or aren't making you $800 an hour," whatever. I don't necessarily agree with that because there's some really, like, low-level tasks that I actually kind of enjoy doing, and so I'll do those all day. But then there's some higher level tasks that I may have to pay more for somebody to do, but I just hate doing them. And
Yeah.
those are the things that, like, you have on your list, but you're constantly kicking them down lower and lower. So, like, those tasks, like, that you go to bed at night and you're like, "Crap, I gotta do this tomorrow." Like, hire those
Right.
tasks out because that is taking up so much brain capacity, so much time that could be focused on other things. So yeah, I'm a big fan of, like, outsourcing, hiring things out, which you have to trust people to do it. You can't, like,
Oh,
pay someone
yes.
to do it and then, like, breathe down their neck and, like, make sure they do it because you might as well do it yourself. So you
Right.
have to trust them, let them do what the thing is that you're paying them to do. And sometimes you have to be okay with it not being perfect. Like,
Mm,
I think a lot of people, business owners, like, want everything to be perfect and don't wanna push it out till it's ready, but, like, sometimes you just gotta go for it. And, people will forgive you if you put a comma instead of a period, even though, you might be stressed out about it. So,
yeah.
I think that's it for me is, like, just figuring out what the tasks are that I really don't wanna do, figuring out what's important first of all, throwing
Mhm.
everything else out, and then the things I don't wanna do, just outsource them and, do the things that make you happy.
Love it. And 100% on, you know, the things that you don't like to do, enjoy to do, definitely outsource it. And the things that you love doing, even if it's like posting on Instagram, right? Like just go ahead and do that if that's something that you enjoy, because at the end of the day, it's going to come across to your audience. And, whatever you're doing, it's going to come across to or whoever it's going to. So I completely agree, and I love your system, which, by the way, I will now, now I'm compelled to put the video up as well so that our listeners can kinda see what you are talking about with your sheet, which looks very neat. You all, if you do get a chance, definitely the link will be in the show notes for you to really see this conversation as well, because it's very important to be organized, to have a system, to have a workflow. That's something that I, really teach my clients as well with, their lives. It's really hard to do it within our lives, but it's so simple to do it, in our careers and our jobs. But when it comes time to actually, taking the time to be there for your kids or something that your spouse is planning or even just as simple as making appointments, right? It can be sometimes difficult because we're like, well, it's important, but at the same time, I'll get to it. And then like you said, we push it to the next day or the next month. And I think that better we can do it on both ends, the better we're going to be. And again, like you said, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I think that's one of the things that we struggle to as women, especially if you've been in the military for over a day, that there's structure and you're like, oh, but it needs to be, the slides need to be great. Or like you said, it has a comma instead of a period, so on and so forth. I've definitely fallen for that. And, it can be a struggle sometimes. And Erin, thank you so much for sharing those tips, those tools. And again, we all have, something to offer to this world. And I think that the better we can do it earlier in your military career. So if you're listening and you're still in the military and you have no idea of, what it is available or what's available in the real estate industry, I highly recommend that you check out Erin Helle. She has an Instagram. She's also, I believe, on LinkedIn, and she has amazing things on her websites, things that she's working on. So reach out to her. Everything will be in the show notes. And Erin, what do you one last thing, what could you offer our listeners today and how can they get a hold of you as well?
Yeah. So I think, hopefully what you get from me is it's all about building systems and replicating and making routine things routine. I think that the biggest thing in business, whether, you're pursuing whatever you're pursuing, even if it's not business, it's that consistency. And the easiest way to do that is to build processes and systems. So that's what I'm all about. And that's what I teach all my coaching clients. And so I have this video, webinar, whatever you want to call it, on my website that helps you understand the system of investing, and particularly in real estate. It's 8-step system from goal setting to purchasing the real estate and repeating the process over and over again. And that's something that it's like 40 minutes. I'm talking super fast because I'm from New York and I'm like, I just want you guys to get the down and dirty, take notes. And I feel like a lot of times when I record videos, I, try to like talk slow. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go all in on
Yeah.
this. Like, I'm going to maximize your time. And it's a pretty awesome video. And I think it's something that you can replicate in other things as well. So that's on my website. My website is bcglobalinvestments.com. And it's under free training on there. There's a tab on there for free training. And then you can email me at Erin, Erin, at bcglobalinvestments.com.
Awesome. And by the way, I'm going to go check that out as well this weekend to see what I learned on the 8 steps because,
Yeah.
again, everyone has something different. And it may be something that I'm like, wow, I never, considered it or thought about this. And again, I believe that the more we can empower one another as women, the better our world is going to be, especially for our younger generation, like our daughters and, others behind them. So thank you so much, Erin, for sharing that. And I hope that if you're listening, tuning in today, or even after this podcast has posted, it will still be available. So check out the link in the show notes. And I pray that this episode has blessed you and that this episode has taught you something and resonated with you as well. And I hope that you enjoyed this podcast. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a beautiful rest of your week. Bye. Hey, lady, if this podcast